All right. All right. So before we jump into the midterm and the homework stuff, um, we have an opening stupid question in class. Uh, so well, and this is more of a something from an overall problem solving perspective. As software engineers, we are in the best position when we know what inputs we have and what output we want. Okay. Especially if somebody gives us, here's what your inputs are, here's an exact example of what the output should be. Now, I want you to bake the cake in the middle that makes that happen. When we're talking about AI, if AI solves that entire problem, we call this a black box because we can't see all the if statements and the loops, even though that's not what lives in there, but we don't see the problem solving approach. But it's called a black box because we knew the inputs and we saw the output. Okay. And if it can magically do those two things for us, we're happy with the solution, even though we don't understand how it came to that solution. Fair enough? That's the power tool of AI. Now, if you're looking at how do you solve problems yourself, you're in the best position when you know the inputs and you know the output. You're in a weaker position if you're like, okay, I have these inputs. What do I want my output to look like? Then you have to figure that out before you can go and solve that problem. That falls underneath the statement of, you have to understand the problem you're trying to solve before you can solve it. So before you can solve the problem in the middle, you have to have figured out what you want your output to be. Right? Otherwise, you're just throwing darts here in the middle. Okay. Similarly, if you know what your output is, I want to make something like this. What inputs do I need to write something in the middle that can accomplish that? What does this thing here require for me to accomplish? All right. So that kind of makes sense. Ultimately, before we start coding, we have to know what inputs we have coming in and what we want our output to look like. All of a sudden, the problem becomes way easier because now we can just focus on making that a reality. Fair enough? All right. So, as I mentioned, we have a stupid question in class. I keep making eye contact with the asker of the stupid question. He's not breaking eye contact either. It's a little uncomfortable. I like it. So anyways, the issue here is we have a goal of transcribing something, and so your input. So your input, you said, is a big long audio file, or is it audio and video?
It's just an audio.
Okay, so you have just an audio file. So now, say this again.
I don't actually have the audio file saved on a cloud that I don't
All right, give me more information about how your audio file is saved on a cloud that you don't have access to.
have. It's through this app called Genio,
Okay.
and when it records, it saves it on its own cloud.
Yeah.
And then, but I don't have access to that cloud, except if I'm trying to like transcribe it or get the outline for it. So
So you have no way of downloading the audio file.
no,
Okay, you've tried?
yeah,
This isn't just you're guessing you don't have a way.
no, I've
You've logged in with your account or whatever, and
yeah,
you can listen to it on there.
no,
So you can't listen to it at all either? Well, you told me there was 8 hours of dead space.
yes, because it tells you on the side like there there's like a microphone like it goes up or down depending.
I got you. You can see the sound that was making, and you see a flat line or no line for 8 hours, right? So you're seeing the visualization of your audio file, where you see this line almost looks like an EKG type thing, and then all of a sudden it's nothing for a while, then it's EKG again once you had heard you talking or whatever, or like it was just 8 hours before it just stopped. So you're seeing that. You can't listen to it.
No,
Okay, you can't listen to it. You can't download it. Really?
yeah,
There's no way for you to get to so historically, it's a piece of software used for transcribing, right?
Yes.
Okay, so historically, after you would record something,
What audio you export.
okay, but historically, when you were done recording, that did you upload that audio to that site? How did that audio get to the site?
The site uses your microphone and does it.
Okay, so you record with the site. All right, so you can record an audio clip with the site, but you can't listen to that audio clip and you can't download that audio clip. All the site does is transcribe the audio clip.
And can make notes based off it, yes.
But well, so it applies AI to your script.
Yeah.
But you literally have zero way of listening to your script.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem like, are you paying for this website?
No, the school does.
Well, even that's even worse. So, I mean, typically we buy pretty expensive stuff. Like Boodlebox was not the cheap. In fact, it was the most expensive solution we looked at. So it's not like, I mean, we usually will vet stuff and we try to buy good software. What's the name of the software?
Genio or Glean?
Genio, like Genio?
Yes.
Or what's the other one?
It was previously called Glean.
Oh, okay. It's updated. Now it's called Genio. Okay, got it. All right, hold on. We got to look at this. Oh, hold on, Brian. You guys already look at it? And I'm even okay with that. I'm even okay with you can't download it for there being a possible solution. But I can't imagine that you can't listen to it on the site. I mean, I even see a giant play button. Their website has a play. Are you sure you're not being stupid?
I'm pretty sure.
Because I feel like there's a high probability. That's recorded. What's the minute? I like to get built soundboards off of it. And I play them on loop when I'm going to bed at night. Really, there's no way of listening to it. Okay, well, so once you figure out how to listen to your audio, I just can't imagine that they would say you currently can't download it, but that there's no way to listen to the audio in the player. Okay. Well, okay, so let's pretend like one way or another you can either download the audio or you can listen to the audio on there. All right. Now you want your output to be transcribed here. I want the text of what's on the audio. And then I also want an interpretation of that in terms of like study notes for it. That's your ultimate goal. No, I'm just saying we're doing this as our lesson here. Your ultimate goal is to produce a transcription of an audio file with notes. You know the audio file is a lecture-based thing, so you want then study notes based on what was covered in the lecture, right? That's your desired output.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you know historically your input has been an audio file. Okay. Now you already have a solution in place in the middle that works for this usually. Right. Okay. So now the issue you have is you recorded a really, really, really long audio. Somehow, right? You know, even though your laptop was closed, one way or another, what got uploaded was a really long video. Okay. So the early thing to play defense against this is make sure your laptop's charged. Or plug it in so your laptop doesn't die in the middle of recording again. All right. But let's assume that you could. So we already know we can't download the audio. We already know that it's not doing what it usually does. All right. But let's assume, well, let's go a couple routes. Let's assume you could download the audio. So you already know the tool you used to do isn't doing the job it's supposed to do. But now you have the audio again. And you still want that same output. You just no longer, this car is broken down, so you got to call an Uber, right? You need an alternate solution. Okay, so now you have the downloaded audio. What could you do with the tools that you're familiar with today to turn an audio file into something that is a transcript that you could then get notes from or something like that? What do you know about today that feels like it would be part of that solution?
All AI.
Okay, well, tell me about that. You said AI can do that. So if you have an audio file, do you just upload that to ChatGPT and say transcribe this? Have you tried it? Does that work?
I have not tried that, but I would probably say that would probably work.
Okay. Or if not ChatGPT, there exists a model because the issue is, I mean, so if you heard of something called multimodal models, like ChatGPT is considered a multimodal model. Gemini is considered a multimodal model, but multimodal is a very generic term. When it says multimodal, it basically says I can operate on different kinds of inputs. All right, so I can operate on text. I can operate on images. So we've seen those two things, right? We've uploaded PDFs to it. Still a text-based thing. Images aren't. But you get the point. You know, it can handle different types of inputs, but not every single model can handle all inputs. So for instance, the reverse of what you want to do is let's say you have a transcript and you want to turn it into audio you can listen to. You know, like making your own audiobook, for example. You know, so let's say you have a PDF and you want to turn that PDF into something you can listen to when you're at the gym or something, or going for a walk or whatever it is. Well, you can ask ChatGPT to give you the text of the book, extract it from the PDF, because if you just cut and paste that, it's probably going to be in a weird format. But that'll do it. Well, ChatGPT itself, you can actually ask it to make audio, but it'll suck at it. It won't do it very well. So what you want to do is you want to go to a model that's kind of specialized in that type of thing. OpenAI, makers of ChatGPT, they have a what's called text-to-speech, TTS. So, one of their models has been trained for text-to-speech. You give it text, it will give you then outputted speech. So you can use that now to turn text into an audiobook, for example. And that's actually using one of their cheaper models. It gets a little bit more expensive because it is, well, actually, if you're using your API, it gets a little bit more expensive, but you can open up ChatGPT 4 Mini using the ChatGPT client if you go to legacy models, and you might be able to upload text right there. But anyways, there exist models that can take audio and output the text. So that gets you that part. Well, now you have this big long window of nothingness. It's possible to export it without that text, whatever. But now from that, you can go and say, organize this into, you know, a study guide for me or something like that. So kind of using this as an example. So for the midterm in here, which remember is due by 11:59 p.m. tomorrow.
It didn't work when I.
It clicks now. We've fixed the issue. All right, um, so I gave you a study guide for the midterm. And what I did to create the study guide, and this is to your benefit, by the way, so you might want to look at the study guide closely, is I wrote the exam first. I went through the slides myself. I looked for what's important, blah, blah, blah. I look at the homework assignments. So I wrote the exam first. Then what I did is I put my slide set into ChatGPT. I put my exam into ChatGPT, and I put the transcription of every single one of our YouTube videos into ChatGPT. So it has all my, and the transcript was, um, uh, give me a transcript of all computer science topics we talked about in class. So it filters out the stuff that would not technically be material I might test you on, or will I? So, anyways, I filtered it out so I just had the computer science content from class, and then I between that, the slides, and the actual exam, I said, produce for me a list of topics that we have covered in this course, all the topics. Then, well, all the important topics, kind of the top level topics. Then create a study guide across all this material, ensuring that the topics that are on the actual exam are emphasized in the study guide to make sure that if you're studying for the exam, you won't miss something that you're going to be tested on. Make sense? So that's a really good use of something like AI. I mean, that's more detail than I would have given you, right? If I would have just written it up myself, but I did, I spent, I don't know, let's say an hour writing the exam. Because the exam is let's see, I think 6 of the 10, 7 of the 10. I think 7 of the 10 questions are programming of some kind. But the test is multiple choice. So there are some questions that are, here's code, tell me what it does. Here's code, tell me what the output is. Here's code that's missing stuff, tell me what's missing. Stuff like that based on what it's trying to do. So, you are not writing code from scratch, but you need to understand the code that should be there when you see it, type thing. So that takes a little longer to write some code that is easy enough for an exam and has outputs that are, not like gotchas. Like, I don't want to write something where the code is purposely tricking you. I want it to be straightforward, but I also don't want it to be so trivial that you can guess at it. That type of thing. So that's like a really cool use of AI, in my view, for giving you a better quality study guide than you would have gotten otherwise. And in that process, I used video to text, which is built right into YouTube. So if we're going to pick up one new skill today, especially since at least I put all my lectures up on YouTube, is you can go on to YouTube. Well, actually, so you recorded my class that day, right?
No, it was one of Blade's classes.
Oh, does he put his stuff on YouTube, or does he use the Panopto? Okay, well, he records his lectures.
Yes.
Where does he put his recordings?
On
Okay, that's the location where the links are. But if you click the link, where does it take you? While he's checking, let's assume it's YouTube. You can go to a YouTube video. So if he happens to have put it on YouTube, or in your case, even if it's on Panopto, he can definitely download it. So you can reach out to Blade and get the MP3 of the lecture that you are missing. So any way you cut it, you'll be able to get what you need for this problem. So we're back to stupid. It's on YouTube? Okay, so do this for me. Are you on the YouTube video?
Yep.
All right, do you see the little diamond looking thing on there? That's kind of right below the video, kind of just on the right half of the middle. I think it's where it's located on the screen.
download one?
No, it's Gemini. There's the icon for Google Gemini. You're not downloading anything. Come on, they're terrible. There. Oh, we'll go to the Hebrew Hammer trailer. This is a real movie, by the way. I watched this with my neighbor. How many of you have seen John Wick? They think John Wick, but instead of John Wick, it's a Orthodox rabbi. Insert hilarity. It's actually a pretty funny thing. Oh man, Logan's out. Look at this. You were nodding bad. It was awesome. You were falling asleep. Oh man. All right. So what I'm talking about is right down here where it says ask. You don't have an ask?
No,
I know it's not premium only.
I don't have Gemini.
You don't have to pay for Gemini either. Gemini's free for their normal tier.
Do I have to add it to?
Well, I guess I don't think so. But anyways, you can click on ask for a video. So figure out where it is or look at YouTube on your whatever. Or give me the link to YouTube and ask me to transcribe this for you. Um, um, but let's assume here, let me go to one of my actual lectures as an example. I need to actually get to YouTube Studio. Oh, no. Yeah, we can't have that play for very long. It's just for no reason, by the way. Um, did I click? This is like a teaser trailer. I think it's a different one. All right, so I go into my content and let's just pick, here's our design pattern lecture from last class. I expect. No, it's not right. All right, so now I can go down to ask and I can come in here and say, give me a text transcript of this lecture with only the computer science content. And then give me a study guide that will help me review the material. Something like that. Maybe for you, this is a reason to, if it happens to be YouTube Premium thing, but I think I have a friend who's used this who doesn't use YouTube Premium, who has Ask on their YouTube thing.
Maybe it's like slowly rolling.
Oh, so here's but at the very least, you can send me the link and I can do this for you. So if you look at what we got here, so here's the audio transcript of everything that was said. You could ask for it in a bulleted list or something, but notice it gives you timestamps if you want to go and listen to it. Then it starts giving you, here's our study guide for it. Gives us definitions, purposes, gives us examples for MVC, singleton, factory that we talked about. You see how powerful the tool this is? So start looking for these things in different, different settings. Those of you who are on Zoom today, you have the Zoom AI thing, right? That most of you probably just ignore. Everybody who's online right now should probably click that. I think I have it that you're allowed to use it by default, but always click it. It might ask the person, the host, for permissions or whatever. But that allows you to ask questions about what's being presented on in real time. Let's say you leave for 5 minutes, come back. You could say, catch me up over the last 5 minutes. Was my name mentioned? Did they, get at the end of a meeting, give me a summary of everything that was discussed today and what I was asked to do. Something like that. These are great tools. Oh, here we go. A participant has asked you to start AI Companion. So start AI Companion. Now, only once the AI Companion starts will it start being able to, you can't, now at this point, you won't be able to go back and ask about the past. But from this point forward, you can ask stuff in here about a specific speaker. You can, at the end, you can say, summarize everything that so-and-so said or whatever. So look for opportunities like this in all the applications you're working with, because we all know that everybody and their brother right now is racing to get AI into every single nook and cranny as they can. But anything that's dealing with information translation, AI is really good at that. So taking text, turning it into something else, summarizing text, all that kind of stuff. That's where AI's sweet spot is, when it has to start trying to solve very unique problems, that are not something that any human can just do off the cuff. But it just takes time. Then you need to get more into specialized AIs and kind of see what you end up with. But in any case, so look for this ask button. If you can't find it, send me the link and tell me what you're looking for, and I'll create the thing for you and send it back.
Paste the YouTube link.
Okay. Yeah. So what Logan just said is you can take your YouTube link. So you can paste your YouTube link into Boodlebox, which is Concordia's new AI solution that they've purchased for every one of the students. And how many of you have opened Boodlebox by now? Okay, at least most of you have opened it. definitely open it. Boodlebox is a powerful tool that's giving you access to at minimum $75 a month worth of subscriptions at minimum. So you can use ChatGPT 5.1. I don't know why it's not 5.2 on there yet, but probably soon. Gemini 3 Pro and Claude 4.5 Opus, which is expensive. Claude is expensive. It's some people look at it as the Apple of large language models. They do call it that. Yeah, so in any case, we now know that our input is a YouTube link. Our output is a transcript and study guide. And in the middle, we need to find a solution. Now, you could write code that would do this as well. So there's Python libraries, where's Carnival, right? There's Python libraries that will allow you to take a YouTube link and turn it into text. So you can write you can ask AI to write you a quick little script to turn a YouTube video into a text-based script. There's free tools out there for doing it. Then you can copy that thing and paste it into free ChatGPT and tell it what to do, or go into Boodlebox and ask one of the premium things, which is what I'd recommend to transcribe it. That's if you didn't know that Boodlebox can take a YouTube link and work with it. I wonder, Logan, did you try with Claude or ChatGPT, or did you only try with Gemini 3 on Boodlebox? Okay. Because this goes back to what we said at the very beginning today about multimodal models. Not all three of those models necessarily all support the same inputs or the same large collection of inputs. So it's possible that Gemini is uniquely able to deal with YouTube links because it's owned by the same company, whereas the other two might struggle with that. That's something worth trying. And that's kind of the advantage with Boodlebox of being able to switch through models that have different capabilities and that kind of stuff. All right. So in any case, for the midterm, the study guide is up, the test is up. It's 10 questions, multiple choice. Should take you less than an hour. I think I gave you 3 hours to do it, something like that. It should not be a time crunch thing. It's closed book. Well, it's closed internet. You can use your notes if you want, just don't run code. This isn't a memorization test. This is an applying knowledge test. All right. But don't go and run the code. Don't test it in something or whatever. I want to see what you're capable of on your own. I'm not taking points off for missing semicolons. Well, you won't even have missing semicolons because you're just going to answer, oh, the answer's C. Right? Just don't go test every single one of the answers and find out which one gives you the right answer. I mean, you got to look at yourself in the mirror at the end. I'm not going to go and look to see if you cheated. It's a waste of my time. I get paid either way, and you're already spending your money. So get your money's worth for your education. Go ahead.
So as long as we're not testing code, what are we allowed to use? For example, we allowed
You could look at the slides. Basically ask yourself the question if you're about to do it. Do I think I'm cheating? If you can answer yourself honestly that I am not about to cheat, you can use it.
Okay, are we allowed to whatever look up
Don't type in the question. Don't say, how do I solve this question? But if you're okay, remind me of the syntax of how map, open up the map documentation on Java or something like that. You could do that. You could open up the string documentation on Java. So anything that will still require you to translate it into an answer is okay. Yeah.
You're specifically referring to notes in the internet, right? You're not answering this question about GPT or anything.
No, I mean, the notes in the internet. I mean, and even ChatGPT. I mean, I'm okay with you using AIs on the exam as long as the questions you're asking it and the answers you're expecting, you can honestly tell yourself, I'm not cheating. I mean, that's the point. So that's
Okay.
that's in the eye of the beholder. I don't care. I'm not going to look. You're only cheating yourself, right? But if you need to reference something because you're having a brain fart and, I don't want you to lose 10% of your exam for something that you're just blanking on for the moment. Do the quick little Google search, unblank on the thing that you already know, then go and solve the problem yourself. Make sense? All right. Okay. Any questions on midterm or any of that stuff? Should not take long, but make sure you get it in by 11:59 p.m. tomorrow. And today, tomorrow. I will have midterm stuff up by Tuesday, but I'll email you if you're in trouble. Unless I just kind of want to see you crash and burn, which that's actually pretty likely. Go ahead. So sounds like all the main tools on Boodlebox, ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude all can take a YouTube link and transcribe it. So, all right, so you're back in business now with your you've just regathered hours on your transcription thing now. You don't have to spend hours doing it, huh? So was he being stupid or was it really hidden? Oh, he was being stupid. Okay, that does not surprise me, actually. I was leaning into that hard. Like if I were betting, I would have put a large amount on that he has to be missing it.
I don't see that though. It's right next to your eyes. All you have to do is look slightly to the right. It's not even that hard. Yes.
I like how on some TikTok videos they make the background look like some of the buttons over on the side, so that when you go and click something, you're clicking one thing, but you accidentally subscribe or you accidentally like, but you think you're clicking on a different interface thing because of the wallpaper they used. Man, scammy. Even if I like it, I'll unfollow it. Yeah, huh? I think it's happened several times.
You get more videos of that.
Yeah, but I mean, if you flip through enough and your seasons of interest change, it is interesting to see like what they show you. So obviously, just being a male, I'm getting a certain level of content. But then most of my stuff is comedians and like funny pets. Like heavy into both of those. Oh, and K-pop. No, seriously. And I've gotten I kind of like some of the beats. What's the um Baby Monsters. That's the group that keeps coming up. This K-pop band called Baby Monsters. Oh, and then that song, was it Up, Up, Up? They just won a bunch of awards or something. What's this? Yeah, them. They keep popping up, but it doesn't have their name on it. Although I now know they have a cartoon coming out, or that's out. Yeah, so if you need an expert on K-pop, I'm opening a consulting company. But most of them are comedians and the funny pet stuff. All right. So remind me, what was the homework assignment? We were already reading in. We talked about singletons last time, right? Remind me, what's a singleton?
Given
Actually,
a
remind me.
singleton a class where we can like input all of our, like our variables and everything that we need to access data so that we don't have to like, do it in the driver class.
Okay. I would say pretty good for you. That was an almost sensical answer, I think. A lot of that was right. I think a lot of that was right. 75%? Go ahead.
Amen.
Like a bucket of data that all inputs can come to, right? So it's like instead of it being isolated in other places, it can be accessed by the entire data set.
Okay. So singleton first of all, we have this idea of a design pattern, right? So design patterns say that, well, here's a proposed, keep in mind, design patterns are not implementations. So a design pattern doesn't suggest how you need to make it. A design pattern says this is the behavior of something. All right. So we have. Still out. So a design pattern is something that says this is a proposed good solution to a common problem where we all know that what is good and what is common are two very different things, right? You know, those are not related to each other necessarily. All right. Some of us have low standards, like actually most of the back row, frankly. And all right, so some of us have low standards, but generally speaking, we kind of all know what a pretty good solution looks like, you know, and we pretty much know within our worlds what are common problems, right? I think I used the example of peanut butter and jelly, making breakfast, whatever. Um, uh, then we introduced, well, I mentioned a couple of different design patterns. We mentioned singleton, we mentioned MVC, we mentioned factory. I actually rarely talk about factory because I basically think singleton solves the same problem, but forget about that for now. But we talked about singleton. So singleton, anybody remember what the definition of singleton I gave is? A singleton suggests that it's a good idea, what? If you have stuff that needs to be shared among multiple classes, it's a good idea to put that stuff in a single repository that all those classes can directly access, rather than passing stuff intricately from class to class to class. Now, if you only are passing information from one class to another class, and once it's at that other class, it's now at its destination, if that is the only thing you're actually doing, a singleton probably isn't the right solution. You don't want to crowd up your singleton just because it's convenient, right? So, you know, with great power comes great responsibility. But generally speaking, singletons, I think, push back against the historical idea that global variables are bad. All right. Sometimes it's the right tool for the job, but you need to use your own common sense. You know, am I putting it up here in the singleton out of laziness, or is it a good idea? And then if you say it's out of laziness, then you can ask the follow-up question of whether or not you care. Because keep in mind, there's a lot of pieces of software that you might write that are only for you. Nobody else is going to be touching that software. Nobody else is going to be using that software. Be lazy all you want. It's your time, right? Toss it all up there. Who cares? But do that once you understand why you're making that decision. You know, once you're making that decision truly out of hostility and laziness, not because of this is the only way I can get this working, then you know you're good to go. All right. But in any case, a singleton says, you know what? If you have stuff you need to share among a bunch of places, put it all in one place so they can all easily access it. That's the punchline for a singleton. Now, the implementation we looked at for a singleton, where did I put it here? Did I call it something fun? Oh, I called it core. Yeah. So I usually will name my singleton classes core for no good reason. I'm trying to think where that came from. Oh, I know. I'm guessing it's from the movie called The Core. Have you seen that movie? Oh, the movie The Core is great. That's required reading for the final exam. Required watching. So the core is basically one of these, think about all these movies about an asteroid hitting Earth, right? You know, so you know, we're trying to scramble to save the planet from the asteroid hitting, right? But instead of an asteroid, it's a government project has somehow stalled the core of the Earth. So it's no longer spinning, creating our electromagnetic field, protecting us from solar radiation. So basically, our own experimentation has stalled the Earth. So what do we need to do? Well, it just so happens conveniently that this crazy scientist has invented a material that gets the more pressure, the stronger it gets. And he's got some sort of laser cannon thing, and they're gonna bore to the core of the Earth. They're going down thousands of miles to the core of the Earth. It's got a bunch of A-listers. It's oh man, it's a great movie. Get your popcorn and other things that you might do to make it through a really bad movie. It's a really good movie, but don't ask a lot of questions about whether some of these decisions make sense. But great movie. I like it. All right. That's why I call it core. And that's why we use the prompts to say only extract computer science topics from Lytton's lectures. All right. So we're in our example of a singleton. I mentioned that singletons, the way I write them, are better than the way all your IDEs write them. This is out of laziness, but it's also out of ridiculousness. All these IDEs, integrated development environments, these are text editors for coders, but it's more than just not capitalizing your, or not changing your case sensitivity of your words or something. It also does command completion. It also has like the ability to like insert common structures. Like you can create a singleton, for just the back of your seat, just rip off. That's awesome. Have to get Blade in here to fix that, or actually probably Ben. he's like, well, switch chairs. Half the front row is broken. All right, so in any case, a lot of times when you say insert singleton, it'll give you this class where you ask it for an instance of the class, and then you use that instance to call a bunch of instance methods. I think that is stupid and pushes against kind of the concept of a singleton. So instead, I like to make just a plain Jane class that just has a bunch of static stuff in it. Now, when we make members of a class, in this case, when I'm saying members, I'm talking about fields and methods, not constructors. Constructors are not things that are static or not static. They're like this special thing that always comes after the new keyword. They just are. Okay, so when we have static fields or we have static methods, what does that mean for a field or a method to be static? Doing a little review for the midterm, by the way.
It's called from the class.
Okay, so being static means it's owned by the class, as opposed to being owned by an instance of the class. Therefore, if something is owned by the class and we want to access it, we access it using the name of the class in which it was defined. So I'm sure we have an example of this somewhere, right? Driver, maybe? Yeah, right here. So here's an example where we are accessing the age variable that we have defined inside of core. So here's the one variable we have in core, named age. It's an int, but it's static, which means this guy right here is owned by this class name. This class, not an instance of the class. So we access it by saying the class name core dot age. And that's what we're doing right here. So now anywhere in our program, we can access those all the variables from core by just saying core dot. So that's a convenience. So we want to make sure we're not necessarily abusing that. All right. So now for this assignment, we were reading in from let's see, I think I had a couple of requirements for the assignment. One was, should you read from cache, or was that part of it? Like, do you process the file and then create a whole bunch of Pokemon objects? Or do you, and then when you run the program again, does it ask you, do you want to reprocess the file or use cache? Is that part of the assignment or just the build a bunch of Pokemon objects? Okay. All right. So we have to decide what a Pokemon object looks like. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to dump all this stuff. And let's get our file IO. Let's get our JSON flying back in here again. So here's our cruise ship JSON. Here's our scanner, blah, blah, blah. We go through here. We build up a string. All right. Once we have that string, we now are using our parser. So we will parse that guy, and this is going to give us a JSON object. And actually, let's see, JSON parser is that guy. Okay, so this is our old thing. All right, so we'll create an object, and this is going to be a new JSON parser, blah, blah, blah. All right. Then this is a line we commented out that was when we were exploring that generic object to find out what he really is. And we decided it's a map that holds either a map or a collection of maps, where a collection of maps can be more collections of things. All right. So we'll go ahead and from that object, we're going to say, okay, you are a map of string to object pairs. This is a standard Python dictionary type thing. All right. And we're going to put it in a variable named root that is a string object thing here. It would be very helpful if you understood the current highlighted line well. Extremely helpful for 10% of your midterm. If you understood this line that is currently highlighted well. Here, I'll unhighlight it for the video so you can actually read it.
Can you
All right,
kind
so
of
having
explain?
said that, are there, obviously there's a question. Oh man. My
Yes,
day is so much worse every single time she talks.
yes. I'm just testing you, you know.
All right, for the record, her and I joke about this outside of class. I'm not just like this. Well, I am a mean guy, but actually I'm a nice guy, just see me. But all right, go ahead. Sorry. I'm ready for your nonsense.
Thank you. So, could you explain why we have object there, like pretty much at the end?
This one right here.
No, no, no. Is that just the name of it, the undercase OBJ?
Oh, this guy?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's our variable name. That's the guy we created right here.
You know why we passed that in though instead of just creating a map object?
Oh, you mean why didn't we just say map like this here?
Oh no, just like why didn't we just create the map string object equals new map string object and then leave it there?
Oh, because we're not creating a new one. We're just saying, hey, I already have something that remember we investigated, we determined that he actually is a map. We looked at him, kind of looked under the hood and saw, oh, this object actually is a map. So I commented this back out because we had already done our discovery process. So that's why we said, okay, I need to take this object that I now know is actually a map, and we're going to typecast him to be a map. And then I'm going to
Okay.
store that in a variable called root that is of that same type, so that from this point forward, when I use root, I can just treat it directly as if it's a map containing string object pairs, name value pairs. And the reason we say string object pairs, can anybody tell me why I'm choosing string object pairs instead of like string pairs or something like that? Why is it a string object? Remember, this guy here, a map is like a dictionary, right? So, it's name value pairs. It's a collection of name value pairs. Why am I saying this guy is a collection of string object pairs instead of string something else? Go ahead. Okay, so we have to think about what kinds of things are going to be the values associated with our string keys. So I might say map, give me the value for name. It's probably going to be a string. Map, give me the value for age. Well, that's probably going to be an integer. Map, give me the value for players. Well, that's probably going to be in a collection, an array list of more maps, so on and so forth. So since the types of values that we're storing inside of these maps can be several different kinds of animals, namely, at least in that last paragraph I mentioned, at least strings, ints, and array lists. A minimum of those three things, and they aren't necessarily super close cousins. Therefore, we have to drop to a fairly generic bucket to hold whatever's fallen out of there. And then we'll look at it and see, okay, what kind of animal are you? So I can then cast you into right thing so I can conveniently work with you. So really, that's what we're doing right here. By doing this line right here, we're saying, I want to be able to conveniently interact with this object that I know is actually a map. Therefore, I'm going to reveal his identity to the program by creating a new variable root that is the result of typecasting object, OBJ, typecasting that into the map that we discovered he actually is. All right, that's what we're accomplishing here on line 37. All right.
Do we know that object is a map because when we
Right here.
print it out, it like basically gives us the ship name, gross tonnage, max passengers,
Well,
and
right here, the
those
line I have
objects.
highlighted, 36 here.
Mhm.
This guy prints out, so I get object on line 35. On line 36, before I commented this guy out, I was printing out the class of the object. So you can ask a generic object, well, you can ask any object. You can ask it, what class are you? And OBJ, yes, he's a variable built for holding generic objects. But if I crack open that case and I look inside there and I say, okay, this looks like a generic object. So I lift it up to my ear and I shake it and I said, what class name are you? You know, he tells me in this case that, oh, I'm actually a map. Or if I remember correctly, he actually was a hash map, which is a map is actually an interface, right? What's an interface? I've forgotten. Man, when I get a room full of silence, I have to remember real quick, don't I? I forget all these things and all of a sudden I get nothing. So interface, what's the difference between an interface and a class? Am I going to get something better than that? Interfaces and classes. I definitely study for the midterm. Most of the class, I think, is attending Carnival's weekend parties. It feels like. All right. So an interface, initially it looks like a class, but instead of the word class, we use the word interface. But what an interface says is anything that agrees to anything that agrees to implement this interface must follow the standard that I'm describing below here. A interface is not an implementation. All right, just like we were talking about design patterns, singleton design pattern is not an implementation. It just says it's a good idea if you want something to occur that you implement something that works like this. Works exactly this way. That's what an interface does. It takes it even further and says it has to work exactly this way. So good example would be like USB compatible stuff. So every new gadget you buy today comes with a USB-C cord or something, unless it's foreign made, and then maybe it's running something a little bit older. You get one of those, the old the mini USBs, not the micro USBs, the one that was in the middle where it's the square looking thing. Oh man, trapezoid. The trapezoid plug, not the not very many curves in that one. Okay, that was an older cable. But in any case, if you want to be USB compatible, you have to make sure that that device that's made by a zillion different vendors, when you plug it into your computer, it has to follow the interface that is the description of the USB capabilities. Because you need to mirror that. You need to mirror at most a subset of that. What happens if you plug a USB-C device in and that USB-C device has capabilities beyond the standard USB interface, the description of what USB compatibility must mean? What if it can do more than that? This is kind of an operating systems question, but not a hard one. It's something that I think many of you have had experience with. You're just killing me. How many of you have ever built a like a gaming PC? Oh my gosh, you people. All right, so you get your new expensive graphics card, your GPU. You plug it in, especially if you've done this a while ago. You plug it in and your computer boots up and it's only showing 640 by 480 resolution in like 16-bit color. It's not showing the screen resolution or quality that you would expect for the $1,000 graphics card you just bought. Why? That card is PCI Express compatible, right? Because you opened up your computer, you slammed it into the port, the thing on your motherboard, right? The PCI Express slot. Okay. And its compatibility was not only that it physically fit in the slot. It's got to speak some kind of language with whatever is the alien on the other side of that slot, right? Okay, so why did it have a minimalistic level of functionality being PCI Express compliant when we really wanted it to do more? Okay. So this is something you probably don't hear anymore. How many of you have ever heard the phrase plug and play? Go ahead, you have a question or comment?
PCI, it might not be like the exact PCIe that you want. Like, it could be a 3.0, a 2.0, or it could be a 4.0, which is maybe the one that you want, and that could cause it to not do the right thing.
Okay. PCI Express is not actually any different in terms of capability. Well, in terms of the blueprint of PCI Express isn't any different than creating the blueprint for USB. Both of them have a series of things that they accomplish at their baseline, but both of them are communication ports, right? Both of them provide power to power devices. Now, presumably a PCI Express port probably is driving more power output. It can power higher power required devices than a USB can power. But sometimes, how many of you have ever had a graphics card that you plug into the PCI Express, but then you also had to plug more power into it? Only a couple of you? Man, this is why he doesn't like Apple. You guys are working with the budget pleaser GPUs. Man, because if you basically tack on an extra $300 per extra plug you need to plug in to get that thing powered, right? That's when you start buying the 1 kilowatt power supplies. Have you ever had a 2 kilowatt power supply? Just
Dr. Levin,
insane.
isn't that similar to like when you are working with a laptop and then you plug in a specific kind of RAM, but the computer doesn't seem to be compatible with that piece of RAM? Maybe it's because it's like a different brand or it has some like that in the amount of gigabytes. So like you're expecting to get 8, but then you end up getting 4 or very little.
Okay. So you're asking, is this also related to whether it's a laptop or a desktop to RAM slots, right?
Yeah.
A lot of laptops anymore don't even have upgradable RAM. we're in a race to thinness, right? Where laptops keep getting lighter and lighter and lighter. So what have they done? They've removed the weight associated with hinges and stuff like that for them to create interfaces with the motherboard for you to put in your own RAM sticks. Instead, they embed it. You now have what are called SoC, systems on a chip. So if you look inside of this MacBook Pro, that has a lot of horsepower, this has 128 gigs of RAM in it. If you look inside of that, the whole computer is probably this big. Little tiny chip at the top of the thing. The whole rest of what's inside there is battery. That way they can claim that, oh, this still gets 20 hours of battery life, even though it's running a chip, a processor that takes more electricity and all this other stuff. Um, so, um, so the question is a RAM slot similar to this? So this is probably a better question for like desktop RAM. So yes, most DDR formatted RAM will fit into the physical slot as each other, or at least the last several are physically compatible with each other. Now, there's two or three different kind of they all have two they all have kind of two sections of width, and they go into kind of two slits, and sometimes one is there's one type of RAM where they're the same length. There's one where one's a little longer than the other. So you do have some physical incompatibility, but generally speaking, it would be possible for you to buy RAM that fits into a computer, but the computer doesn't recognize. So you have to buy the RAM that is speaking the right first of all, speaking the right protocol at the right speed. So a lot of times when you're talking about this thing is how fast is it having to speak its language? So when you so if you get RAM that is faster than what your system can support, one of two things happens. It either won't support it or it'll slow it down. So now it'll be operating at you basically spent more money on something that's operating at something that would have cost you less money performance. So that's another possibility that runs in there. So yeah, I mean, I think RAM fits into a very similar category here. But now going back to the GPUs, because I think the GPUs is where we see this the most, is you boot your computer, you see something that does not look like what your $1,000 graphics card should be pumping out, because yeah, it's PCI Express compatible, but if you try to implement all the amazing features of your $1,000 graphics card on top of just the default PCI Express capabilities, you're going to leave a lot on the table. So what do you have to do to make your graphics card work better? What do you have to install on your computer or have your operating system install on your computer to make it work better? Go ahead. A driver. By the way, remember how we said that I like to call our main programs driver? Because this is the thing that drives the program. You have a piece of software, a computer program that runs on your computer that will drive that graphics card. It will do all the special things that are over and above what PCI Express can pull off on its own. It knows how to talk to the newfangled stuff that NVIDIA has invented over the last year, or the last probably 20 years since the protocol for that PCI Express port was invented. Because you probably don't want to be relying on that, right? So that was a big deal when our operating systems transitioned into operating systems that didn't require to have every driver pre-installed with the operating system, with no ability for more drivers. This used to exist. You haven't experienced a lot of these things where you would install this really expensive computer and get a monochrome output. It was like, okay, this was this happened. This would have been like the NVIDIA GeForce 1080 Ti's time period, a while ago now. It was not uncommon back then for you to put that card in and for you to get a black and white screen, which would be demoralizing at best. Go ahead.
I was gonna say that when my dad had first got that maybe PI, it did that exact same thing. It's like, why is it doing?
Yes, you have to install the driver. Back then, you usually would have had to go to the website, to NVIDIA's website, download the driver, and you probably still should, if you're a gamer, download the actual driver from NVIDIA. That way it stays up to date. But Windows does have a fairly recent version of the NVIDIA driver that comes with it. So the chances of you putting a fancy graphics card in today and having it boot up and you visually seeing a problem is pretty low because it has all these built-in drivers. But actually, I think that's kind of worse because now you think, oh, everything's working fine when actually you're running probably a little bit of an out-of-date driver. Kind of get what I'm saying? All right. Well, so in any case, the punchline with all these things is the original question was interfaces. Interfaces describe what you must build. So this goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning of class. We know that we know what our inputs might be. We now need to know what our outputs must be. And these outputs are going to be based on a compatibility layer, which an interface describes. So an interface says, look, I don't care how you write this, but you have to have a function called run. You have to have a function called ABC. You have to have a function called X, Y, and Z. You have to have a variable called LOL, whatever it is, right? Those are requirements for your implementation. It's not implementing it for you. Interface describes requirements. Classes are the implementation. Actually, classes are the blueprint of the implementation, which then come into existence when we create instances of them. That's when it becomes an actual thing you can hold, except it still lives digitally on a computer. So then you 3D print it and marvel at it, even though now it's lost all of its capabilities. I think we need to get Dr. Manoj in here. This is a philosophical conundrum, right? So, if you haven't taken a Dr. Manoj class, I encourage you. I encourage you to do it. A little bit dry, but very British. So make all the British jokes. They're good. He's got a good sense of humor, if you didn't notice. Oh, both, I assume both. Which are you doing the? Okay. Yeah, he has a class here that he gets into C.S. Lewis. I don't know if C.S. Lewis is in the topic of the class, or I think it is. I think it's like Christian thinking based on C.S. Lewis or something. And that's been a pretty popular class over the years. Okay. So in any case, we back to my previous question. We had, why is this an object? It's because the values we're storing inside of our map are going to be of all sorts of different kinds. You have a good nap?
What?
How long would you guess you slept during class?
No, I was locked. I was paying attention. I was locked.
I literally.
I was listening. I was listening.
Logan, if you think of way that you totally answer that interface question and not just let it be silent. I'm just saying.
No, actually would have been hilarious if nobody else was answering it and all of a sudden he like threw snores. It'd be like the old school example I gave last week with Will Ferrell when he's like, "What happened? I blacked out," when he just gave this perfect answer. All right, so we are typecasting. So remember, back to, let's say, an important thing since we're running low on time. Remember, I said make sure you understand this line. Make sure you understand the idea of generics that we're looking at here, and specifically what we are accomplishing by saying, hey, generic object, I know you are actually a map. Therefore, I would like to conveniently speak to you as if you're a map from this point forward. So I'm going to create a variable named root where I convert you into the map that I already know you are. And from that point forward, I can now talk to him as a map. And then we saw that when we investigated it, we saw that if we ask that map to get his string-based key, here's our string, all right? If I say, give me the value associated with your key ships, it then gives you a array list. Now, I want you to see something that we did here, because I did two separate ways of accomplishing this. In this way here, I built my thing as a generic object first. Then I built a new variable that worked on it. But I could have built object as a map and typecast what was coming out of here in real time. So I could have done it in one line rather than creating two variables. And the example of where I did something like that is right here, line 38. I knew that root.getShips was going to be an array. Therefore, I knew it was going to be an array list of maps. That's what JSON arrays are going to contain. They're JSON arrays of JSON objects, right? So I got that, and I put that into a variable called AR that is of type array list of map. All right. So you can do it either way. You can do it in 2 steps. You can do it in 1 step. Just make sure you understand what's happening in there. This line, line 38, and line 35 plus line 37 do the identical type things. All right. Pick your poison. All right. This is our for each loop. I don't think that's all that important for the, like, I'm not going to ask you a question on the midterm of like, show me a for each loop. No, they exist. Understand the pros and cons of a for each loop versus a for loop. For loop takes I on a voyage. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. A for each loop says, hey, I'll go ahead and take care of giving you the object that lives at every bucket, but you'll lose access to which index you're at. So if you need that variable for something, a for each loop's not the way to do it, or make your own counter. All right. All right. Questions about the midterm, comments, concerns, bribes. All right, so today we kind of reviewed for the midterm. So everything that you need for the midterm was covered by the end of class last Thursday. That's the stuff that's on there, or just read the study guide. No homework over break. Remember, we're on spring break next week. So we will be back, what, Tuesday the 10th? I think is the date. Go ahead.
Like during the exam, like suppose I want to look some stuff, like I know this is just an example, like suppose like we forgot, like for example, like we forgot like what we call the base call was, like for these, like this is just an example, like suppose we forgot something like that.
Like a base memory address? Is that what you're talking about? Well, whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
You can look it up. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, does that feel like cheating to you?
No, I don't.
Well, I mean, it sounds like the fact that you asked means that you think it probably isn't cheating, right? It probably isn't cheating if you thought it was reasonable to ask, right? It's you know what cheating clearly looks like when you do it, right? So if you feel like you're not cheating, it's going to be fine. I'm not going to check. All right. So as long as you can look at yourself in the mirror after the exam, that's the only litmus test you have to pass. Do you think you cheated? And you're the one who has to live with it. I'm not going to take points off. I don't care. Right? You know, that's my job is to teach the stuff, not to police how you're discounting your education. All right. I will see everybody after break. Chapel front row, 9:30 if you are interested.
Dr. Rubin, I have one more question about that same line of code that we just went over, that
Sure, go ahead.
object. So you were saying that we know the object is already a map. So what we do is we're basically like solidifying it even more so by putting that map object
You mean
into
38?
another one.
You're talking about 38 here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or I
you're not
think it's
actually
37.
solidifying it. I mean, when we want to talk about AR,
Oh, I mean 37, my bad.
yeah, well, 37. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, what we're doing is it's not so much solidifying it, it's that, hey, I want to use this guy as if he's a map, because that's what he actually is. That is instead of saying root.get here, we would have had to say,
I focused my eyes closed.
you would have had to say something like this.
Yeah.
So if you didn't create that variable root, you would have had to do this every single time you want to use it as a map.
Okay.
You would have to typecast it each time you want to get something from it as a map. Instead of typecasting it once here And now you have a variable that from this point forward is always a map already. So we can just say root.get. The only reason we're doing typecasting here is because the thing that's coming out of root.get is now a new animal. He's an array list. This has nothing to do, doing this here has nothing to do with what root is. It has to do with what came out of root when we asked it for the value associated with ships.
Okay, that makes sense. Also, would you call this entire sequence of like coding that we've done so far pretty much just it's not singleton, it's parsing, or what would you like call this if I wanted to like do this on my own?
Well, call what? Just what's happening on these 3 lines?
No. I'm just talking about like the entire thing. Is this getting an API?
Well, I mean, the overall assignment is working with the Pokemon API, but then what we're doing in this part right here is we're just manipulating data. I mean, this is post API. APIs allow us to get and send data.
Oh,
Once we
okay.
have our data, which happens right up here. So by this line right here, we have a string. The API is in the rear view mirror rather. We have a string called data, and that's all we're operating on moving forward is a string. Just like our programs we've been writing for a year.
Okay.
But that
So we're like,
string came from an API.
okay. So we're taking data from the API and then manipulating that data using HTTP, post, get, put,
Well,
create.
no, I mean, don't insert stuff that's not actually in the code. We
Okay.
have a tool that allowed us to talk to that API. We're using a get because that's all we need is a get because that's the one endpoint we have. So yes, APIs can support get, post, put, and delete, but we're not actually interfacing with those things here. We're also not writing our own API. We are just talking to us. In our case here, we wouldn't even call it an API. We're just talking to a website. It just happens to be an API that's part of it because we're using a GET request. It feels like it's just talking to a website. That's why we were able to load it in a web page ourselves.
Okay. So just more so talking to a website API and like retrieving the data.
So I guess what I want to emphasize here is don't try to pigeonhole 7 coding files into what are we accomplishing here, for a single sentence. We're doing a whole bunch of individual little pieces. And remember that all hard programs are made up of a bunch of easy parts. So everything we talked about today is how do I screw around with a string? That's what we have here. Data is a string. It just happens to be in JSON format. Therefore, I want to work with it. I have a parser that lets me parse it. That's working with a string. Nothing on the internet's happening there. We're already past that. We have our string.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep. You have a good one.
You too. Bye bye.